One of the most common dead ends in genealogy research is when someone stops appearing in the parish records and there's no burial to explain it. At that point, a lot of researchers give up, move on to the next research goal. But in my experience, that's usually the wrong moment to stop. So when this happens, in my research, I use a simple 3-part lens. First, I understand the place. And then I research the people closest to them, both biologically and geographically, as in neighbors. And then finally, I watch for the signals that tell me where to take the search next. This video is how I determined if somebody died, they stayed put, they moved on to somewhere else in England, or left the country entirely. There's been a lot of immigration in my family. That disappearance could be the start of a very exciting trail, not the end of it. For me, a disappearance typically looks like this. So I have a married couple in a parish, and I've recorded several baptisms, and then the trail goes cold. After that, I might find the couple in later censuses. I might find some of the children in other later censuses, but I don't find everybody. The first thing I do when someone disappears is to slow down and understand the place they were last living in. And not just the parish name, but how the parish actually worked. The parish boundaries, the religions contained within the parish, the work they did or their family did, and how they actually moved. Parish boundaries weren't how people lived their lives. People walked across them all the time for work, church, socializing, shopping. So when someone seems to vanish from a parish, the first question is not, did they move, but did they step over a boundary? And this is why maps matter so much. I love them. I want to see where the parish sat, what parishes bordered it, and how someone could reasonably travel by foot, horse, or boat in a normal week. A baptism or a burial in the next parish over might not represent a major move at all. It just might reflect that point in time. And also, the appearance occupation, because actually some trades and occupations moved around more than we think. For example, I know that my agricultural laborers, they would be in neighboring parishes doing work at young ages, and even some of the young women would be, servants in other people's homes. So before I look anywhere else, I want to very clearly describe what I know about their last known location. Once I understand the place, I stop searching for the missing person by name alone, and I start following their people. That means their parents, siblings, their in-laws, their neighbors, their employers, anyone who appears alongside them in records. Throughout history, people rarely moved alone. They moved with the people they knew or towards people who already made the move. So instead of asking, where did this person go, I ask, where did their group go? Where did their people go? If a brother marries in the next parish or their sister shows up in a census in another country, that gives me a direction to follow. A missing person could appear in records at any point in their lifetime, so look beyond the immediate time period as well. Once I've searched the parish itself that they were last seen in, then it's about widening the search pretty carefully. It's not about hard distances, but it is about community and local transportation networks. So, for example, the walking distance by roads, also by waterways. I don't currently have figured out a good way to determine those, but I do have a couple methods you could look at. Both of them are online maps. So the genealogist has one. I'm going to write about this in my Substack. So I will check places where people could reasonably walk to work, to marry someone else, and so these would be something like between 5 and 10 miles. And then there's also the census if you're within that time frame. So that started in 1841, where they named people in the household. I also learned the hard way to record my negative searches. So that is to say, I have started doing more blanket searches within a parish on a specific surname, because in my situation, there's so many people with the same names, and I have to be ultra careful that I'm assigning the right names to the right families. When I'm doing that kind of audit, I often work outside of my family tree software. For me, it's easier to see the patterns emerging and being able to conclusively see the relationships before I commit them to my family tree. So I have a question for you. If you've ever had this research problem where you've had the trail go cold for somebody and you had to research outside of their immediate area, where did that trail take you? Was it London or somewhere else, or did they end up crossing an ocean? Let me know in the comments. So step 3 is once we've eliminated the neighboring parishes, it's time to follow the trail of family members and even members of their friends, associates, and neighbors network. I am not worried about their surname at this point because that's too broad. In a lot of my examples, the surnames aren't specific to a region. So Elliot is one of the surnames in my family, and I see there's Elliots in Ireland, there's Elliots in Scotland, they're everywhere. So that's just not going to help me. So as part of that next step, I research everything I can about their siblings, because where the siblings end up is actually a pretty good chance they will end up there, if not immediately, but at some point. You could even research their siblings' in-laws. You could look at the neighbors, see where they ended up. And the reason I suggest looking at neighbors is because they could actually end up being family also. On any other marriage records, you're probably familiar with the fan club, which is the friends, associates, and neighbors, and that concept has been written about widely by Elizabeth Shown Mills, but it's very important to understand your missing persons network. Step 4 is once you've researched their family and their network, take a step back and ask yourself if there are some signals you're seeing. So the first one would be, is there a pull towards London or another major city in the United Kingdom? That's definitely a possibility. Second is look for a shift in the economic circumstances of someone in the family or in their network, because it could mean there's been an inheritance. So if you haven't found a will already pointing out, that could actually be, well, it could actually name your missing ancestor also. Also, if the occupations change, because that could also indicate some kind of movement. The third one is if there's an absence of a record in England, but the family is showing up further away, and especially abroad, that's a really big one. It definitely seems like people travel together. If they don't travel at the same time, one follows the other. So those are the major clues you should be working with. One of the moments that really cemented this approach for me was a will that I found for William Dawson. So he did not have children of his own, but he named siblings, half-siblings, and their children. And that one document completely blew out my tree and rewired how I understand movement, relationships, and later even migration within that family. So he was my 7 times great uncle, and the inheritance of 100 pounds that he gave to my 4 times great grandmother was enough to completely change the trajectory of their life. So 2 years after she got married, she received this 100 pounds, which is about 12,000 pounds in today's money. I believe that it was enough for them to buy land, and then eventually they moved to the States. So, I mean, that's huge. Interesting though, her siblings did not all move to the US, but that's another story. I believe that the money that these people inherited was enough to change the course of their life. I've written about this will in Substack, so you can see what I mean, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those. So this process doesn't tell you exactly where people went, but it does give you some really good clues. I think it tells you the paths that are worth following and the ones that are not worth following. And when somebody disappears from the records, it's not failure, it's information. Tell me in the comments where your research has gone cold. I'd love to know. And when the other videos in this series are up, I will link them here.